I'm going to be using a bit of the whiteboard today. If it's annoying or you can't see it, just comment, just roll with us. We're kind of catching our groove, really seeing like what content really gets through, what's the best way to present it. So just work with us. So comment if you can't see it. Next time we'll make sure that it's clear and big enough so that you can. So last video, I talked a little bit about the first step of getting into anything, like I said, but definitely real estate investing, which is why are you getting in it? Like, what's your goal, right? Getting additional income, so income within 6 to 12 months in real estate investing, that's typically going to be considered short-term income, right? Like quick income. That's gonna bring you a whole different direction than if your goal was stability or asset protection, tax strategies, or long-term wealth building. That's gonna bring you an entirely different direction than the other goal would be. So you gotta know, why are you getting into real estate investing? What's your end goal? And then from there, you can work through pathways. And so we have our goal. Let's, for this video, assume that our goal is stabilization of like financial, platform or foundation. Let's say you've got a little bit of money in stock. Let's say you've got a healthy, annual salary, and you're just looking to add another piece to the puzzle, right? So let's say that's the goal, long-term wealth building. The first one that would match obtaining that goal would be buying a rental property, a single unit rental property, also known in what you will see and considered buy and hold, right? So we're gonna talk about buying or looking for, or just the overall pathway of owning a single unit rental property, okay? So first thing I wanna say is, I don't wanna act like it's, this, never thought before philosophy, right? But I feel like I look at buying a rental property a little bit different from a lot of folks. I think if you talk to a lot of people, the primary focus of buying a rental property will be your monthly cash flow and what your margins is between expenses and your actual money in, right? So at the bare minimum, when you're buying a single unit property, you want to be able to cover your expenses, right? That's a value point, or what I will describe as a value point. I like deals. I like rental properties and obtaining rental properties with multiple value points, right? So the 3 value points, just to keep it somewhat simple and not have a 30-minute video to watch, that we're gonna talk about, there's 3 of them, right? So the first one, you need to have a healthy monthly cash flow, right? So you need to be able to cover expenses, and we'll talk about, a little bit more detail in a second. Ideally, you'd be able to cover expenses and a bit more than that as well, as far as, being able to create actual monthly profit. Okay, so value points, there's 3, right? So the first one we're talking about is monthly cash flow. So again, you need your cash flow to cover expenses, and then you want to have a bit of a margin so you can realize some of that profit monthly. Example, you have a property that you pay, let's say you pay $2,000 a month in mortgage. Your expenses, so obviously you have a $2,000 mortgage. You're also going to have taxes, you're going to have insurance, you're going to have repair, maintenance, you're going to have, and I'll talk about this in another video, maybe property management expenses, right? There are expenses on top of your mortgage. You will be doing yourself a big disservice if you only account for your mortgage. So you need to be able to cover expenses. And then with a single unit, everyone's different. There are all types of formulas. You can plug and chug a property and a deal in and kind of get a result back, whether it's a good deal or not. But I want to say, you at a bare minimum want to be seeing $400, $500, $600 on top of expenses for a single unit buy and hold, single unit rental property, okay? So your first value point, monthly cash flow. Your second value point, property value, right? Are we buying in an area that is likely to increase over time in property value, right? So me personally, I'll give you a little tidbit. I like buying on the edges of a cluster of good areas. So, and when I say good areas, by the way, I want to be very clear, very subjective. When I'm talking about a good area, I'm talking about that has a, medium to high, median property value, relatively low in crime, things of that nature. What is a good area to me could be very different to somebody else. And I understand that, respect that. So I want to be very clear. But buying in an area where your property value will increase or likely to increase over time. So for instance, I bought my first property in Butchers Hill. Butchers Hill, Baltimore City. If you know Butchers Hill, Baltimore City, you know that it's also right on the edge of one of the biggest parks in Baltimore City, Patterson Park, okay? So boom. You are right next to Fells Point, which is a really good neighborhood in Baltimore City. Canton, which is also a desirable neighborhood, and so on and so forth. So you're buying, and Butchers Hill, by the way, is a beautiful neighborhood in its own right, but you're buying not necessarily in a neighborhood that has already peaked, right? You want some room for improvement. And that's always dependent on, obviously, the level of that. Typically a good thing, right? As long as you have enough around your asset that you're buying to stabilize it and support it while the area is still growing, okay? So 2 value points so far: monthly cash flow, property value, room to build equity, okay? Equity, equity, equity. So what I mean by that is, do you have the ability to add square footage? That's a way to build equity. Maybe it needs a couple upgrades, specifically maybe in the kitchen, maybe in the owner suite bath, right? Are there actions you can take as far as either construction, repairs, upgrades that will immediately increase your property? I love the opportunity to do that, right? So my favorite thing is, no matter what pathway I'm kind of going down as far as investment strategy, is to be able to take advantage of that value point and build equity over time by making small to even big project type repairs. Okay, so these 3 things are mega important, because when I'm buying a buy and hold property, a single unit buy and hold or a single unit rental property, I want to hit on at least 2 of these, right? If I can hit on all 3, awesome. But I obviously, for a rental property and to buy a successful rental property, you need monthly cash flow and you need it to be healthy. You can't win in this game if you don't achieve that first value point. So that's already taken. So we're going to assume that whatever property that you would buy, I would buy, is going to have a healthy monthly cash flow. And then I want to hit on at least 1 or 2, or at least one of the next 2, right? So do I have the ability to grow property value over time? Is that safe? And then do I have the ability to build equity? I need at least 1 of those, all right? So we're looking for properties, and then we see that we are able to hit on 2 out of 3 of those value points. Awesome. So maybe something's catching my eye, right? Then you need to go deep into the due diligence phase, right? So you have an address, you walked it, it looks interesting to you, it makes sense, you like the area, you like the trajectory of the area. Look into the actual value of the property right now, right? You've got to know the value, you've got to know what to pay for it, what to put it under contract. Major gem I will give you, and somebody told me very early on, I can't forget who, or I can't remember who, but it's crucial. You make your money in real estate on the purchase, right? Think about it. If you overbuy, it's going to be a struggle to make money on that deal no matter what, right? You're climbing an uphill battle, right? On the opposite side of that, if you underbuy or you just buy at value, your pathway to success is going to be much easier. So you got to know the value of the property or the potential rental property that you're buying, because you need to know what to offer, how to construct your offer package to not only gain success as far as getting it under contract, but also to have long-term success and be able to pad some of these margins and different value areas. You know the property value. The next thing you need to know is absolutely you need to know your rental command, right? So one thing is knowing your value, your for sale value. Another thing is, what are we leasing this bad boy at? You got to know that, because you've got to know that you hit on that first margin, and you've got to be confident at every phase of this transaction. Acquiring, stabilizing, maintaining at any point during that process, purchasing or while you're holding a rental property, if the cash flow, the monthly cash flow kind of range and scale rather, if it tips the other way, you've got to find an exit strategy, right? So certainly on the front end, you've got to double check, triple check, quadruple check that monthly cash flow is where you need it to be, and you're covering expenses, and like I said, $500 to $600 margin, if not more. But certainly that would be something that you want to see at least, right? So anyways, typically with buy and hold properties and buying a rental property, I would say there's a couple avenues of financing, but I'm not going to really deep dive on that piece. But you could certainly take advantage of creative financing like DSCR loans, maybe some other structures. But I want to say the bulk of the rental properties that I sell to individuals and clients that I'm lucky enough to serve are through conventional loans, right? Your standard conventional loan, maybe another structure, VA, done strategically and obviously the right way per terms. But it's those everyday loan structures that you're seeing or hearing about or that you've learned about. And within, so you buy a property, you buy an investment property, let's say conventionally, you can expect to need to put down or being required to put down at least 20%, right? Typically, you need to put down at least 20% of the value of the purchase price, rather. So you need to put down at least 20% of the purchase price down. So you can expect to do that day one, right? If you can put down more, awesome. But expect to put down at least 20%. And then from there, of course, you have closing costs as well. You're going to need to get landlord insurance, which is a little bit different than your standard home policy. Right around the same price. It can go up and down a little bit, but it's generally in the same world. And then I think the other thing, the big note to touch on is you need to account for property management. I mean, a lot of people try to self-manage. You certainly could try. I would highly discourage against it. I mean, I think simply put, it's just not worth the time, right? You buy rental properties typically to create stabilization or passive income. And if you're working that rental property, it's no longer passive. So I think you need to at least consider hiring a property manager. And I would do it 100% of the time. And I would very much push you to do so. Typically, you can get a very good company in your market for about 8 to 10%, and that 8 to 10% you're paying by far exceeds the time, the effort, the stress you'll go through, self-managing a property. So spend a little bit of your money. It's just another cost of doing business. Again, you pad that into kind of your front end due diligence, but locate a qualified and even better than that, one that's going to go over and top for you in a property management company or a single property manager. Get them on board and get them rolling, get your property leased, stabilize it, and then collect your cash flow. So again, this is specific to a single unit buy and hold, single unit rental property. We'll talk about multi-units, right? But this is relevant to single rental properties. Value points, monthly cash flow, property value increase or the likelihood that it will increase over time. And then does the property have room to build equity? We want to hit on two of those, okay? Location, 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 that's huge. And then you keep going. You're not going to get rich buying one rental property, right? As I said, this is a pathway that's most relevant to someone who wants to build long-term wealth and just kind of add another piece to their bigger portfolio as far as investments, retirement plan, and so forth. But if you keep going, right? If you have the means to do so, if your threshold of effort and work, you want to put in some extra work, you want to build maybe legacy is big to you, This by far is one of the most popular ways to invest. The barrier to entry is one of the smallest, right? So you can get right in there for most people. But if you keep going and you add one to one and you keep doing that, over time you absolutely can build a beautiful life with single unit rental properties. It's a slower process than, let's say, multi-units, and we'll get into that later. But I myself have multiple single unit rental properties. They've been good to me. I've been able to, capitalize in different ways, right? Hitting on different value points and other avenues on top of that, right? So again, single unit rental properties, one of the most popular ways to invest, one of the easiest ways to invest. It's how I got started, kind of. I highly recommend you considering that as well. Again, if the goal is long-term wealth. Hopefully you found this video informative, helpful. If you feel like I went too slow or I breezed by something, again, just comment, let me know. I'll answer every single question in the comments, and just keep rocking with us.